Tell me the vicar in here tonight. I was glad to hear that, really, because I didn't want to annoy him. I bought a house some time ago when I got there, and I didn't get on with the vicar very well, and I'll tell you why. The garden hadn't been tilled for about 10 years or more. And I was up over the road edge there, gardening, they're trying to dig it and clean it away. The vicar came down one morning, he said, "Good morning, Peter." I said, "Good morning, vicar." He said, "You and the Lord doing a good job there?" So I said, "Yes." Only in the afternoon, down the road he come again. "Hello, Peter, right on then, you and the Lord's doing a good job." Next day was the same thing. Day after was the same as well. I got a bit fed up with him, you know. He come down that afternoon, he said, "Hello, Peter." He said, "I see you and the Lord doing a wonderful..." I said, "Hang on a minute, vicar, hang on a minute now." I said, "You ought to have seen this place when the Lord had it on his own."
Behold, a giant am I, a giant am I. Aloft here in my tower, with my granite George I devour the maize and the wheat and the rye, and grind them into flour. I look down over the farms, in the fields of grain I see the harvest that is to be, that is to be. And I fling to the air my arms, for I know it is all for me. I hear the sound of flails far off from the thrashing floors, in the barns with their open doors, with their open doors. And the wind in my sails, the wind in my sails, louder and louder roars. I stand here in my place, here in my place. With my foot on the rock below, and whichever way it may blow, I meet it face to face, as a brave man meets his foe. And while we wrestle and strive, my master the miller stands, and feeds me with his hands, and feeds me with his hands. For he knows who makes him thrive,
vicar, you know. He met a chap coming up the road one day. He introduced himself to him, so he said, I'm your new vicar. He said, I haven't seen you around before. Who are you? Oh, he said, I'm Tom, sir. And he said, what do you do for a living? He said, I'm a shepherd, sir. Oh, yes, he said. So the vicar said, and how many does your flock consist of? Oh, he said, I believe I got about 180 vowers, sir. Oh, that's several to look after, the vicar said, but of course, you know, I've got a flock as well. Oh, have you, he said. So he said, yes. So how many you got then, vicar? Oh, he said, a couple of thousand, I expect. And the expression on the old chap's face, the vicar looked at him and he said, you look frightened, my man. What's the matter? He said, well, I was just wondering how you managed come lambing time, sir.
This is just the kind of day that you dream about. When you open up your mouth, a song pops out. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay, my oh my, what a wonderful day. Plenty of sunshine heading my way. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay, Mr. Bluebird on my shoulder. It's a truth, it's actual. Oh boy, everything is satisfactual. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Wonderful feeling, a wonderful day. Mr. This is just the kind of day that you dream about. When you open up your mouth, the song pops out. It's the truth, it's actual. Everything is satisfactual. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Wonderful feeling, wonderful day. Zip, zip, zippity-yay. Who invented music? We'd like to shake his hand. 'Cause music casts a spell on us that we can't understand. Maybe a magician designed the magic plan. He changed his wand to a baton. And that's how it all began. When the rhythm pounds and the harmony sounds and the melody rolls around, presto change-o, we're 10 feet off the ground. And when the rhythm pounds and the harmony sounds and the melody rolls around, then right from the downbeat we can be found 10 feet off the ground. When everybody puts his heart in and everybody plays a part, that's how music magic is made. And everybody's toes get happy, everybody's feeling happier, lighter than air, out of his chair 10 feet off the ground. 'Cause when the rhythm pounds and the harmony sounds and the melody rolls around, right from the downbeat we can be found 10 feet off the ground.
His sweetheart rejoices to several names. Mary, Annabel, Sue. But it matters not if these endless flames, for a tenor can ne'er be untrue, for tenors are always true. But oh, for the power that the vocalist can sway, and oh, for the music that makes us glad and gay, for a man can be happy with a voice to call his own. He may either be a tenor, a sweet melodious tenor, or else a rich resounding baritone. And the baritone sings of the glorious battlefield. He's a soldier or a sailor, and his trusty sword he'll wield. He fights for his country, and he never fears the foe. He'll defy the raging tempest when the stormy wind do blow. Or he'll turn the thirsty pirate, or a gypsy, or a thief. His many occupations are almost beyond belief, and his might is so tremendous, he can call the world his own. It's a privilege to be a mighty baritone. Tenor and baritone, we are respectively. We can in baritone sing most effectively. So hard to set, most art, trio quartet, which takes his part. But oh, for the power that the vocalist can sway, and oh, for the music that makes us glad and gay, for a man can be happy with a voice to call his own. He may either be a tenor, a sweet melodious tenor, or else a rich resounding baritone. He may either be a tenor, a sweet melodious tenor, or else a rich resounding baritone.
Many years ago, I went into a barber's shop. I thought I needed a haircut. He just finished one chap. He jumped up, brushed off his coat and that, and he said, "Next, please." And a poor old chap with one arm sat down in the chair. So he said, "How do you want it done, sir?" He said, "Oh, sorry." He said, "I don't want a haircut." He said, "I want a shave." Oh dear. The barber looked at him. He said, "Well, I haven't done this for a long, long time." But he said, "I can't manage myself very well." Well, he said, "If you like to sit there," he said, "I'll have a go, like." So he got the old gear out the cupboard, blowed the dust off, got the brush, and the lather knocked it off, and he stropped up the razor, he started scraping off. He nicked me here and he nicked me there. "I'm sorry," he said. Old chap said, "That's all right." Stuck a bit of paper on here and a bit on there. In the end, he finished and he had 7 bits of paper stuck on. He said, "I'm sorry about that, sir." He said, "Oh, that's all right, it's not too bad." So he got up and then he wiped his face off a bit like, and he brushed him down. He said, "By the way," he said, "you've been here before?" The old chap said, "No." He said, "I lost my arm in the war."
A word about this Viva Tutti. It's an old English glee. In spite of being old English, it was written in Italian. Are there any Italians here tonight? Well, thank goodness for that, because we're going to sing it in Italian, so we won't have any critics about our diction afterwards. So here we are then, early English glee in Italian. And the words, I understand, refer to toasting the beautiful young ladies. All the ladies here are young ladies, I can see that. And they're all beautiful, so here we are, ladies, here we go.
Viva tutti la canzone, donna Mariana Rose, viva tutti la canzone, donna Mariana Rose, che non hanno crudeltà, che non hanno crudeltà. Viva sempre, che la donna sole, viva l'amata sedeltà, la canzone, viva, viva, mamma Rose, viva, viva, viva tutti la canzone, donna Mariana Rose, che non hanno crudeltà, che non hanno crudeltà. Viva sempre, dalla donna storia, viva l'amata sedeltà, la canzone, viva, viva, mamma Rose, viva, viva, viva tutti le canzoni, donna Mariana Rose, che non hanno crudeltà, che non hanno crudeltà.
There are so many ladies here this evening. I feel perhaps we ought to sing it just once more. So I wonder if perhaps this second time round you might help us. If you just clap along and you keep the time going for us. So could we try that out? I'll start you off. Mind you, faster.
When I was coming over here tonight, I thought, well, I better tell one or two farming stories. There's the farming district over here. Any farmers in tonight? I worked on a farm once, you know. I remember going looking for a job when I was a youngster. And he said, have you worked on a farm before, my son? I said, no. He said, well, I'll take you on a month's trial and pay you what you're worth. At the end of the first month, I owed him £2.5. He sent me out in the field one day, and he had great heaps of manure out there. You know what I'm talking about, all this organic stuff. And he kept drawing it out with a horse and cart, tipping up great heaps, and he gave me a fork. And he said, shake it on here, boy. Shake it all over the field, put it on thick. Because I'm going to tell Teddy's ear, and I'm an awful hungry thing. No sooner I got rid of one heap, out he'd come with a horse and cart and tip another one up. We went on all day like that. I was fair baked come evening. Put it on thick, boy, he kept saying. I'm going to tell Teddy's ear and them awful hungry things. Day in the evening we went in to supper, and I was starving. We had pasties. I thought, this is lovely. I took a knife and cut mine in half and took one look at him. I looked across the table at the boss. He said, what's the matter? I said, you're right. He said, what about? I said, Teddy's being awful hungry things. I said, they've ate all the meat in my pasty.
a song of sixpence. Sing a song of sixpence, a pocket full of rye, 24 blackbirds baked in a pie. When the pie was opened, the birds began to sing. Wasn't that a dainty dish to set before a king? The king was in his counting house, counting out his money. The queen was in the parlor, eating bread and honey. The maid was in the garden, hanging up the clothes. When by came a blackbird, a blackbird. And pecked off her nose, pecked off her nose. Sing a song of sixpence, a pocket full of rye, 24 blackbirds baked in a pie. When the pie was opened, the birds began to sing. Wasn't that a dainty dish? Wasn't that a dainty dish? Wasn't that a dainty dish to set before the king? When I get older, losing my hair many years from now, will you still be sending me a Valentine, birthday greetings, bottle of wine? If I'd been out till 2:45, would you lock the door? Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? You'll be older too. And if you say the word, baby, I could stay with you. I could be handy mending a fuse when your lights have gone. You can knit a sweater by the fireside, Sunday morning go for a ride, doing the garden, digging the weeds. Who could ask for more? Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? Every summer we could rent a cottage in the Isle of Wight. If it's not too dear, we shall scrimp and save our grandchildren on your knee. Little Vera, Chuck, and Dave. Send me a postcard, drop me a line, stating point of view. Indicate precisely what you mean to say. You're sincerely wasted away. Give me your answer, fill in a form, mine forevermore. Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? When I'm 64. Pass me by one summer day, flash those big brown eyes my way, and oh, I wanted you forevermore. No, baby, I'm not one that gets around, swear my feet stuck to the ground, and though I never did meet you before, I said hello, Mary Lou, goodbye, goodbye heart, sweet Mary Lou, I'm so in love with you. I'm in love with Mary. I knew, Mary Lou, that we'd never part. So hello, Mary Lou, goodbye heart, goodbye heart. Saw your lips, I heard your voice. Believe me, I just had no choice. While horses wouldn't make me stay away. Thought about a moonlit night, arms about you good and tight. That's all I need to see for me to stay. Hey, hey, hello, Mary Lou, goodbye heart, said sweet Mary Lou, I'm so in love with you. I'm in love with Mary. I knew, Mary Lou, we'd never part. So hello, Mary Lou, goodbye heart, goodbye heart. Hello, Mary Lou, I'm in love with you. Yes, hello, Mary Lou, goodbye heart. Right from the start I said hello, Mary Lou, goodbye heart.
You know, there was two old farmers in the village, and they'd been farming in neighbouring farms for many, many years, and one poor old chap sadly passed away. And a few weeks after, his son was down in the pub having a drink, and another old farmer was down there as well. Sorry to hear about your father, he said, it was sad, you know. He said, I'd have missed your father. He said, I dare say you do, George. He said, we farmed alongside each other for 50 odd years there, you know. Always good friends. He said, I'd have missed him. He said, I suppose you do. George, he said, now you're talking about father, you don't mind me mentioning it. But he said, I've been trying to settle up his accounts and his business. Going through the books the other night, he said, I noticed that there's an outstanding account there, you'd owe father £100. He said, I should be very pleased if you could settle it up. So George scratched his head for a minute, you know. He said, how old are you, my son? He said, 43, George. He said, look, he said, I'm 89. He said, I shall see your father for you.
Oh,
travellers to go around from time to time on farms, selling artificial manure and taking orders for different things, you know. And this particular day, this chap came in on the farm and knocked on the door. Couldn't see nobody around in the yard. Mrs. answered the door, so he said, "Boss, about Mrs.?" He said, "I'm from Dalgetty's. Animal food stuff." "Oh, no," she said, "he's gone out for a minute." She said, "Come in, sit down." He said, "He won't be too long. I'll make a cup of tea." So he went in and sat down, and she was there cooking, and she made him a cup of tea. And while he was there, two little girls come in. And he looked, he saw twins. So he said, "This yours, Mrs.?" She said, "Yes." "Handsome they are." And away they went out again. Still there drinking his cup of tea and talking, and in the door come two more. God, he saw twins again. He said, "This yours as well, Mrs.?" She said, "Yeah." God, he said, "They're handsome, aren't they?" They took a bun each and away they went. And sure enough, a little while after, two bigger ones come in the door. They grabbed a bun and was gone again. He said, "Was that yours, Mrs.?" She said, "Yes." God, he said, "Did he have twins every time?" "Oh, no." She said, "Sometimes we never had nothing." Many years ago when we was married, we were both very naive, like, you know, back in the days as we were. And somebody gave us a little pig for a wedding present. So we put it out in the backyard in the shed. When it all settled down and everybody went home, Mrs. said, "What are we going to do with it?" And I said, "I don't know." So I said, "We could feed him up and eat him." Well, of course, she said he couldn't do that. She said we couldn't eat him. So I said, "Well, what are we going to do with him?" Well, we kept him on for a week or two, like he was growing away, and I seen a friend of mine one day down the village, so I told him the story, see. Well, he said, "You haven't got it." I thought he said you could feed him on till you get a brave sow, like, you know. He said you could mate him up, he said, and have young farrows and sell them. Make a bob or two. So I went back and told Mrs. Well, she said, "That's better than 8 of them." She said, "How do his man and that?" I said, "I don't know." So anyhow, I seen a friend of mine and I asked so he said, "Well, you know," he said, "Charlie Jago," he said, "up the lane from you," he said, "he got a male pig up there." He said, "If you take him up there and they'll have him mated up," he said, "and then she'll have young ones and you'll be away." So I said, "Proper job." So I come home and told Mrs. this, see, she said, "Oh, that's grand." She said, "How are we going to get an upper?" I said, "I don't know." So I thought for a minute or two. I said, "Oh, I know how to do it." I went out and I got the wheelbarrow. And I put the old sow in the wheelbarrow, see, and pushed her up to Charlie's place. Got up there, "Hello," he said, "Peter, what's up?" I said, "Well, I brought this one up. They told me that you got a male pig up here to mate up with." "Oh, yes," he said, "in that door. Shove her over there in that door." So we shoved her over and put her in the door with this male pig, you see, and we was there standing talking, and after a while he said, "Must be all over now." Open the door and out she come. So I said, "Everything all right?" Then he said, "Well, yeah," but he said, "I can't guarantee it." He said, "I'll tell you what," he said, "you take her home." He said, "If you wake up in the morning and there's up eating grass," he said, "we'll be all right. But he said, if it's rolling in the mud, you'll have to bring her back." So I put her up the wheelbarrow and home we went. Told Mrs. all about it. She wanted to know what happened, see. So I said, "Well, I didn't know already." He shut the door. So anyhow, got out next morning, pulled the curtains back. Oh, I thought, oh, there old toad was up rolling in the mud. So I put her in the wheelbarrow again after breakfast, and up the lane I went. Put her in the house, and it all happened again, and I brought her home. And darn me, the next morning her was still rolling in the mud. So I in the wheelbarrow and up again, getting fed up with it now, see. Charlie said, "I'm sorry about it," but he said, "You know, I can't do nothing about it." I said, "Well, no, I don't suppose you can do any better job in the board camp." Brought her home again for the third time and turned her out and went about my work. And the next morning we woke up. Mrs. said, "We can look out." I said, "No." I said, "I'm afraid." I said, "You look out." And they jumped out over bed and pulled the curtains back, and I was there listening. They said, "Oh my God." I said, "They're rolling in the mud." They said, "They're eating." I said, "They're eating grass." "No." "Get out." I said, "What are they doing?" They said, "They're sitting up in the wheelbarrow."
As I walked home on a summer's night when stars in heaven were shining bright, far away from the footlights glared into the sweet and scented air of that quaint old Cornish town.
Born from afar the gentle breeze, joining the murmur of summer seas, distant tones of an old world dance, played by the village man perchance, on the Carrier came floating down. I thought I could hear the curious tone of the cornet crowned at a big trombone, fiddle, cello, big bass drum, bassoon, flute, and euphonium. Far away as in a trance I heard the sound of the choral dance. And soon I heard whistles and rustling and prancing, and then I saw the whole village was dancing. In and out of the houses they came, old folk, young folk, all the same, in that quaint old Cornish crowd. Every boy took a girl and raised and hurried her on in tremendous haste. Whether they knew one another, I care not. Whether they cared at all, I know not. But they kissed as they danced along. And there was the band with the curious tone, and the cornet, clarinet, and big trombone, fiddle, cello, big bass drum, bassoon, flute, and euphonium, each one making the most best chants, all together in the floral dance.
I felt so lonely standing there, yet I could only stand and stare. For I had no maid with me, lonely I would have to be in that quaint old Cornish town.
When suddenly hastening down the lane, the figure I knew I saw quite plain. With outstretched hands I rushed along, and carried her to that merry throng, and fiddle and all went dancing down. We danced to the rhythm with the curious tone of the cornet, clarinet, and big trombone, dancing Jane, Betsy's there, singing Johnny everywhere, each one making the most best chants, all together in full rock dance. Dancing here, dancing there, singing Johnny everywhere, up and down and round the town.